gentlemen, I welcome you to our afternoon session of the Info Day of Horizon Europe of cluster number 2 on culture, creativity and inclusive societies. My name is Harald Hartung and I'm in charge of the unit dealing with fair societies and cultural heritage at the European Commission. And I will be your moderator for the afternoon session today. In the morning session, we had in the beginning a presentation of the political priorities of the European Commission for the next few years, for the individual policy actions which are proposed for this period. And this is a very important background also for developing your future projects, because we need to link them to the policy priorities and to the political initiatives in order to find solutions to the problems ahead of us. And this is what our Pillar 2 of Horizon Europe deals with, namely to tackle the challenges and to make best use of the opportunities the changes in our political, economic and societal environment will bring about. In the morning session, you also had presentations of the first 2 destinations of this cluster, namely on democracy and on cultural heritage. We had sessions with presentations of the individual topics, and then a question and answers from the floor. This afternoon, we will be dealing with the destination, dealing with socio-economic transformation. And the characteristic of this destination is that it covers a very broad spectrum of activities. They range from aging over migration to tackling inequalities and education. And this makes it also a bit complicated to find the right topics which are of political importance with the budget which is at our disposal. And when I'm saying this, let me recall that we've got a budget for this destination for the year 2022 of some 90 million euros. We've got 10 topics in this work program, which my colleagues will set out to you in a few minutes, which means that we could approximately fund some 30 projects with an average funding of some 2 to 3 million. So that would be the framework for these for this approach. Now, before we go into the details of this destination, let me just mention the structure of our afternoon session. We now have roughly 1.5 hours for this destination on socioeconomic transformations. This will then be followed by a block of half an hour with our colleagues from the executive agency REA, and they will give you tips and tricks when you want to prepare and submit a proposal, because they are the colleagues who manage the different proposals as far as the selection is concerned, and once the contract establishment, and then follow up these different projects with the project promoters. And they've got a wealth of good hints they can give to you. So please stay tuned, stay on until the end of our meeting, because after this presentation, we will then do the conclusions of this meeting. So that would be, in a few words, the program for this afternoon. And let me also recall what our colleagues mentioned in this morning. The presentation of the topics you will hear this afternoon are linked to policy priorities of the Commission. And it would be very useful that you have a close look at what these policy priorities are. For the ones who have not been present at our meeting this morning, I suggest that on YouTube you can double check and re-listen and review also this part of the session. It would be quite useful to get an idea of what these priorities are. So this is the first point I wanted to make. The second general point is, and this goes for all the topics, namely that we cordially invite you in the field in which you want to submit a proposal, that you check what are the already ongoing projects which are close to the field you're dealing with, and to the extent possible, liaise with researchers there so that you can really have a broad overview. That could make very much sense in this work. And also when you produce your proposals, please bear in mind that you need, or it would be advantageous if you could establish a dialogue also with the policymakers throughout the running of the project, because you will produce recommendations for policy making, and therefore it's good to have regular exchanges with the ones for whom you prepare these projects. This, from our experience, has proved to be very useful if you do this. Now, when going through our destination on socio-economic transformations, we have divided this into 3 different blocks. And after each of these blocks, we will then have time for questions and answers. And let's start with the first block, which consists of 3 topics, and they are all related to migration. And I invite Michael Moshovakos, who has joined or rejoined us 2 months ago. He's a specialist with his background in migration and youth, and he will present the 3 topics to you. Michael, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you very much, Harald, for the introductions. So I will now take the floor to present 3 topics as regards migration. I want to say that through these calls, through these topics, we want really to enable the research community to examine the topic from different angles and to fill in gaps that we have identified in order to inform policy making with evidence. Now, this sounds very simple, but it's actually a huge task. So without further ado, I'll be presenting the topics. So the first one is called conditions of irregular migrants in Europe. And the logic of this topic is the following. There is a fine number of irregular migrants in Europe, which is also very much needed for Europe. They are part of our economies, of our Black economies, not only in the stereotypical country someone would expect in the South and East Europe, but also in Western European countries. And there is also another category of this irregular migrants, which is called intra-EU mobile citizens, who, although are not irregular, they are exposed to highly exploitative situations. So being EU nationals. So the big question here is, and this is the logic of the topic, why are irregular migrants so exposed? Why our laws, which otherwise seem to work fine, aren't working on this particular situation? The situation is problematic for migrants who, as I said, are easily exploitable due to the status, but it's also problematic for the host countries since they cannot initiate measures for integration. And there are many examples of this situation. For example, there are Moroccan workers working in Spain under temporary status who basically depend on their employers to extend their stay, and there could be cases of abuse. There's also a gender aspect in the situation. For example, women seem to be more exposed to sexual exploitation and things like that. Now, at the same time, the pandemic has exposed all too clearly how the various sectors of our economy rely on migrant labor, and in particular on irregular migrant labor. So we call for research to better analyze conditions facilitating this, for example, in the agricultural food chains. And we invite also the research to appraise these policies to tackle this exploitation. This is a goal. At this stage, let me state something important as regards the language used in drafting these calls. Whenever you read the word should, then this is something that should be tackled. Wherever it says could or may or encouraged or advised or these kinds of words, then this is not a criterion against which the proposals will be evaluated, but they rather show a direction which we find interesting. So in a nutshell, we invite proposals to analyze the conditions of irregular migrants in the EU member states and associated countries, and wherever relevant, of intra-EU mobile citizens in informal or exploitative conditions. This is a should. Attention also should be paid to conditions for access to basic services and rights. Proposals should also analyze the reliance of particular sectors of the economy on this irregular workforce. There should also be the gender aspect, and then also proposals should develop comparative analysis across EU member states and associated countries as regards these conditions and activities. And as mentioned before, we want policy recommendations. This is the essence. We want these recommendations to provide options for enhancing the protection of migrants and those providing assistance to them. To close with this topic, please let me state that all expected outcomes should be tackled, and this applies to all the topics that I will be presenting today. So let's go to the next topic. Yeah, so this is a topic that is called decision-making processes of aspiring migrants, and again, it's a research and innovation activity of 9 million. As before, this is a topic that has been much debated with many people within the migration community. Basically, there is a mobility bias in research. We tend to focus on the people who move, but the majority of people under the exact same conditions don't move. They stay where they are. So we want to know, why is that? What does motivate someone at the individual level to move? We know a lot on the cause of migration at the macro level. So, for example, we know that if GDP increases by X, then we have a certain increase in numbers of migration by Y, and so on. But what we are really missing is the micro level analysis. This is important. This is important because when you do policy, you're trying to have an impact on how migrants are making these decisions. And if you don't, then your policies are basically blind and based on assumptions. So they need to be substantiated. Now, as I said, there is a scarcity of research that considers the way in which meso and micro levels interact with each other and with macro level determinants. What do we mean with micro and meso? Micro is really the individual level, really at the person level, how they perceive structural factors and interact with them. With meso, we mean the social, we mean the society around the person, family, church, the village, the people around that create pressure. With structural factors, we mean socioeconomic factors, political situation, climate-related factors, and things like that. And with socio-demographic characteristics, we then mean gender, age, education level, socioeconomic status, ethnicity, and so on. So, if I may illustrate this with an example on the kind of impact this topic we would like to have. we know that the migration journey is not linear or predetermined necessarily. For example, a person who lives in a village decides to move to the city next to it to find a job or for other opportunities. If he or she don't find them there, then he will move to the capital, from there to the EU and so on. And this impacts our policies, obviously. So the big question for us is, can we intervene? Can we influence these decisions? If yes, how, when, at this stage? Can we, for example, when the person is, in the process of the journey, decide to give them training where they are, and so they won't have reason to move forward? It's these kinds of questions. And then is also we want to know what is the role of existing legal channels or irregular activities? Do they influence, and to which extent? And other also factors such as smugglers, networks, culture, tradition. So these are all aspects that we would like to explore. We would like you to explore. And there is also a behavioral aspect in this topic. And we are asking to use behavioral studies to really understand these kinds of things. So what we ultimately want to know is to what extent our policies are effective. This is the key question in this topic. Again, please pay attention to the shoulds when you read the topic, and as before, all expected outcomes should be tackled. Let's move on to the last topic now. So the last topic on the migration batch is called a return and readmission of irregular migrants in the EU, and again is a research and innovation activity of €9 million. We hope that with this topic, we will fill in a real gap in migration policy. It goes without saying how important this is in our policy work and politically. And so the issue here is that when reviewing existing evidence underpinning return and readmission policies, much of this work is unfortunately very shaky. Ideas such as the people will get more trust in our migration policy if we do more returns, or effective return will deter irregular migration sound very, very well, but actually has little evidence supporting them. And the truth is that the EU has a hard time returning people. On average, we return about 2 in 10, and especially with African countries, this is even less. So with this call, we are inviting first attempts to really delve into those issues and to understand perspective of third countries with extensive field work, especially in African countries. This topic consists of 2 blocks. The first one is on the drivers. So why we do these policies, what are the evidence supporting them, what is the role of the public attitudes, and how are the fundamental rights of migrants affected? All these are shoulds. The second block is the international component, and more specifically, to analyze the barriers and enablers to successful agreements between the EU and countries of origins and transit. Here the question is, what if a country does not want to take its regular migrants back? Why do certain countries cooperate while others do not? Why these policies at the national level, and this is interesting, seem to work better than at the EU level? To give you an example, when Germany cooperates with Tunisia to return irregular migrants, it has way better return rates than when the EU does the same with Tunisia. And this is just a random example. Moreover, we want to know what is the role of diaspora groups in shaping these kinds of decisions and positions. We want, for example, we know, for example, that there are very big and very strong diaspora organizations that influence heavily national policies. What are the interdependencies between the different policy domains that are increasingly integrated in return and readmission policy, such as development and trade? What could be done with people who cannot be returned? Are there alternatives? And what about their rights? And then finally, what are the actors involved in this implementation and the financial and political costs associated to this? These are all questions that need to be tackled and produce policy recommendations, which in turn will inform EU policies. As a final remark, let me state that due to the scope of this topic, international cooperation is strongly advised, in particular with countries in Africa and Eurasia and or Middle East. And similarly to the topics I presented earlier, all expected outcomes should be tackled in your proposals. So I think I will stop now, and yeah, I'll give the floor back to Harald for the Q&As.
Well, thank you very much, Michael, and in particular for the insights you have given us as far as these three topics are concerned. I just want to refer to further sources of information you might need, namely to see what are our developments in the social sciences and humanities we do. Here with this link, you get the news on our research work we do. Secondly, we've got the frequently asked questions in our tender portal, which are more of a technical nature, which you might want to know. And as I've mentioned that you should seek links also with ongoing projects in a similar field. You can do this via the Cordis database. So thanks very much for having shown this slide. And I now open the first session of questions. And let's see what our colleagues will ask through Slido so that we can see. Wonderful, okay. The first question I see here is, what does Michael mean with can we intervene? Intervene with migrant decision-making to achieve what? And maybe, yeah, the second, I also take the second, the second question. Well, yes, all slides are available, and you are on YouTube, and with YouTube you can always get back, because this is being recorded, not just in a live session, and therefore you can watch not only the slides, but also the presentations the colleagues have made, and you can also find the links we have put into the slides. Michael, I hand back to you.
Yes, thank you, Harold. So with the can we intervene question, as I said, the journey of a migrant is not linear. Someone does not necessarily leave their village and go to the EU directly. It goes through several stages. So the question is, through the stages, someone is looking for a job and he's leaving his village to go to the capital of his country to work. What can we do in terms of policy? For example, if we would give them training to find a job, would he move or would he stay? It's this kind of questions we want to answer, but to answer these questions, we really need to know what makes someone to migrate, how these decisions are made. So okay. This is, if I could, yeah, shed some light on that question.
Okay, I see then the next question, the role of NGOs. Let's be clear, what we do here is research with the researchers. But in particular, in these fields, as far as irregular migrants are concerned and the motivation of migrants is concerned, I could imagine that it would be very important to work together with NGOs who are able to reach out to the irregulars, because the state organizations, by definition, sometimes do have difficulties in reaching out to the irregulars, and the irregulars do not really very often want to get in touch with official institutions and therefore want to do this through NGOs. Therefore, I could imagine to involve NGOs in such topics makes sense. Well, this is what we have received so far for the 3 topics, Michael, you have presented. Thank you very much for this presentation. And we now go to the second block of topics, and we will have three individual topics. And the first one will be presented by Pilar González Pantaleón, the second one by Jean Lenders, and the third one by someone you have already met this morning, this afternoon, namely Michael Moshovakos. Pilar, you will open the presentations, and the floor is yours, please.
Thank you, Harald. Hello, I am Pilar González, and I am going to present you the topic on strengthening racial, ethnic, and religious equality. It is a research and innovation action with a global budget of 9 million euro, and it is expected that proposals will have a budget between 2 and 3 million euro. In this topic, we would like to look into the living and working conditions, as well as social, education, and health conditions of people from minority or migrant background in the European Union and associated countries, all with the aim to counter institutional racism in the provision of basic services and access to the job market and or education. Research should analyze the relation between structural inequalities and structural discrimination. It should investigate the minorities' experience of discrimination. And research should also focus on manifestations of racism and xenophobia, taking into account national specificities and intersectionality. What we expect to achieve with this topic is, first, to map, collect data and knowledge on structural forms of racism and discrimination. Secondly, to develop evidence-based knowledge on how racism, xenophobia, and discrimination are institutionalized and impact on people with minority and migrant background in the European Union and associated countries. Thirdly, to evaluate existing policies related to employment, education, security, living and caring conditions of minority and migrant communities. And finally, to document and make visible the contributions, struggles, and cultural heritage of minority communities. Thank you. So I give the floor back to Harald.
Thank you very much, Pilar. I hand over directly to Susanne.
Thank you. So I'm presenting the topic Gender and Social, Economic and Cultural Empowerment, which is a research and innovation action with a budget of 9 million euros, where an estimated budget of between 2 and 3 million euros will allow each project to address the outcomes appropriately. So this topic starts from the premise that gender equality is in the distribution and concentration of power in all political, social, cultural, and economic spheres is far from being realized. The Gender Equality Index from 2020 shows that power actually scores as the lowest domain of all 6 domains, and this is then the same also for 2021. And it has been aggravated in the light of the economic crisis, the pandemic, but also the climate emergency. So for this topic, we expect proposers to develop or to propose a theoretical framework to understand the formation of gendered powered hierarchies that can lead to discrimination, inequalities, and gender-based violence, but then also take into account the underlying social causes, such as gendered norms around masculinities and femininities. And building on this, proposers or projects should then analyze the interrelation of power and barriers to gender equality between those different social and economic spheres, and those can be inter alia, policy and decision-making, labor market participation, including the gender pay gap, work-life balance arrangements, gender-based and domestic violence, reproductive rights, gender roles in education, but also in cultural representations like the art and the media. So based on that, the project should then develop concrete practical solutions, innovative tools, policy responses to dismantle structural and systematic roots of gender inequalities. So the overall expected outcome of this topic is to aim for a better understanding of gendered power hierarchies across all social and economic spheres that take into account cumulative effects of multiple forms of discrimination and disadvantage. So here the intersection of perspective will also be important. And those should also provide new evidence-based knowledge on the role of media and education in the construction and deconstruction of stereotypes. And then overall, this should contribute to reversing socioeconomic and cultural inequalities and promote gender equality, and thereby realize the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goal 5 on achieving gender equality. And then I would also add that for this topic, international cooperation is strongly encouraged, as well as social innovation approaches. So that's it. And then I think I can hand over to Michael.
Yes, thank you very much. So the next topic is called Conditions for the Successful Development of Skills Matched to Needs. It aims to tackle a real problem of the world of work and the society, which is the skills gaps and mismatches, both from the supply end as well as from the demand. Moreover, this is a topic that will support the objectives of the European Skills Agenda, which was adopted last year on the 1st of July 2020, especially from the angle of vocational education training and adult learning. I want to go a little broader here and say that this is a topic, the skills, in which the Commission pays particular attention. As a matter of fact, skills is in many ways a policy priority for the Commission in view of the COVID recovery and the green and digital transitions. And for that end, the Commission is supporting financially its implementation, the Skills Agenda implementation, by mobilizing several funding tools, including, but not only, NextGenEU, ReactEU, the European Social Fund, and of course, Erasmus Plus and Horizon Europe. And when I say it's supporting, I mean in the neighborhood of billions. Now, the goal of the Skills Agenda is to really reap the potential of these transitions in an inclusive and resilient manner. And the guiding principle is the so-called skilling for a job. This means starting from a mapping of each individual's skill set, delivering targeted training on upskilling and reskilling needs, and helping the individual find a job in demand on the labor market. The Skills Agenda, of course, goes beyond and covers a series of intervention areas, such as improving skills intelligence, making vocational education and training future-proof, showcasing skills, enabling everyone to participate in learning, transversal skills, and so many more. So reading this topic through this prism, in combination with the policy challenge of the topic, which is, as I said, the skills mismatch on both ends, supply and demand, one could expect that proposals may tackle and contribute to the promotion of one or more areas of intervention of the Skills Agenda. The list I just stated is, of course, indicative. And this is also complemented by a wide range of examples provided in the topic description in the work program. And these examples showcase angles of research that seem, to us at least, interesting. For example, the role of employers and workplaces in the provision of VET, the role of personal attitude and gender stereotypes, information and structural factors in the decision to seek initial or adult education, and so on. However, there are two shoulds that must be covered. The first one is that research should really examine the issue of skills mismatch and skills gaps by looking into the roles played by individuals, public and private employers, skill development institutions, and policy framework. So we really insist on a holistic approach. And the second is a less strong should, because it applies only when possible and relevant, and calls for drawing lessons from recent policy interventions, propose adjustment measures, and test them through social innovation experiments. As a closing remark, I would like to say that in this topic, both of the expected outcomes are to be tackled. Thank you very much. Harold, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Michael. Thank you very much, colleagues, for your presentations. Here we have again the link to the frequently asked question to our database and to the general information on humanities and social sciences. And I think we can now move then to Slido and to the questions we have received so far. And I was also informed that also on the first block of presentations, we've still got some questions. So I suggest that we first still take the questions we've received in the first block and then go directly on with the second block. Michael, the first one is for you. What is meant by irregular migrants?
Sorry, with the term irregular migrants, we mean basically anyone who decides to migrate not using the legal channels. Simple as that.
Okay, yeah, simple thing. Yeah. Then we've got a question on transformations of 104. If we would like to integrate researchers, partners from Georgia, Turkey, Myanmar, and these questions, well, as you have seen from the content of these topics, we do not only focus within the EU, but also outside the EU. Now it is up to the ones who submit proposals how they would like to organize themselves. But of course, it could make sense that you have a direct access to also researchers in these countries. I wanted to ask our colleague Rosanna, would you be kind enough to maybe say a word on that, as far as the third country participation is concerned?
Yeah. Thank you, Harald. So some of the countries indicated here are associated countries, and this should be are either associated or in the process to be associated, but it should be relatively easy, also because they normally have national contact points. Of course, for the other countries that are listed here, for instance, Iran, Pakistan, Myanmar, it depends really on the contacts that the scientific that takes place at the level of the scientific community. Certainly the countries indicated here are all countries that receive EU contribution. So it would be relatively easy involve them in the sense that we can provide EU contribution to, in particular, to the countries indicated here.
Okay, thanks very much, Rosanna. I think that's very clear. Then we've got a question, can NGOs coordinate? Now, as far as the legal possibility is concerned, I will leave this to my colleagues from the executive agency, who will take the floor then in the half hour from 4 to 4:30. But please bear in mind, what we do here are research projects, and therefore, to my understanding, it would make sense that a research project is also coordinated by a research organization. This, of course, does not at all include NGOs, in particular as far as irregular migration is concerned. But to mount a structure for research, you also need to have the necessary expertise in research. Michael, the next question is too difficult for me, and I ask you, namely, could you explain what is meant by the decision-making in politics?
Harald, this is for the topic 0105. I'm not sure it was mine.
I think this refers to the gender topic. What is
Oh, sorry, John. If you okay, so now we are ready with the second block. Sorry, yeah. Okay, then please. And you can also take the next, the one after this, because this as well deals with the same topic.
Yes, sure. So with decision-making, that can be all level of decision-making. This can be membership in boards, any leadership positions in larger organizations, associations, but also in parliaments. But that depends, of course, on the partners and what fits best to your project and your consortium as well. And then for the question on side from Africa, if there are any particular regions suggested for international cooperation, not necessarily. The core text does say that legal entities established in all member states of the African Union are eligible for funding for this topic. But apart from that, it really, again, depends on your project proposal, what makes sense, and yeah, it's still very strongly encouraged. So having this global perspective would be really good for both. Okay.
Thank you, Jan. Michael, the next one is for you, intra-EU mobility and EU citizens.
Yes. So basically, I'm now reading the above question, and I don't want to give an example which triggers the hearts of people. But if I can put it then abstractly, we mean citizens of the EU who migrate within the EU in another member state, and for certain reasons find themselves exposed in highly exploitative situations, and de facto are treated like irregular migrants.
And I think in a nutshell, it is intra-EU mobility and not intra-EU citizens in mobility. So that is to say, it is the mobility within the EU, now regardless of if they are EU citizens or immigrants. The next one is also for you. You've given such a good example, Michael, that people want to ask for another one. I didn't know if you've prepared another one. Yeah. If not, it's no problem either.
Yeah, sorry, I don't have one handy, but I'm sure I could find one, so we could come back later on this one.
Okay, good. So I think that concludes the questions and answers for the second block. And we now move on to the third block of topics. And here we've got 4 topics to be dealt with. And the presentations will be started by Beatrice Lucaroni, followed by Cristina Sarvani. Third in the row is Richard Buchs. Some of you might already have heard in the second session this morning. And it will be concluded by Pilar González Pantaleón, who has made a presentation already in the second block. Now, I move on to you, Beatrice. The floor is yours. And after your presentation, you can hand over directly to the next speaker. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Harald. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My pleasure to walk you through topic 110. The topic, first of all, has an overall budget of 9 million euros and can therefore support a number of research and innovation actions. What we want to do with the topic is to better understand the profound socioeconomic effects of aging societies.
And in the frame of changing demographic induced by both aging and migration, the scope, and here it's a matter of the should, as you heard before the presentation of colleague Michalis, so should consider inclusive policies for medium-term challenges of aging societies and develop long-term strategies in several fields to overcome global shocks on economy and labor market. That, of course, in line with an analysis to be done beforehand on the situations that we face today at the level of the EU, the member states, or even at regional level. As mentioned in the call topic, you will also see that all the expected outcomes should be addressed. And the first one, with the first one, we would in particular like you to analyze the impacts, both the positive impacts and the negative impacts of aging societies on productivity, employment, economic structures, investment, growth, and sustainability for medium and long term. And then the subsequent parts of the text of the outcomes give you a very important indication to explore the several facets of aging as a driver in order to formulate knowledge-based policy measures for the general and the constant increase that we're experiencing nowadays in healthy life years. This should also contribute to formulate mitigating factors against all sorts of inequalities. And what we can also see, an example is given of inequalities in the policy area of the working skills. Finally, also, you will note that there is a clear focus to contribute with research to fight against any form of age discrimination and promote the values, for example, like seniority in the job in the job area, in the occupational area, with the transmission of the knowledge, valuing the knowledge of the workers who have matured a certain number of working years. Also, another thing that is important to note, at the bottom of the description of the topic, you will also see that the topic is highlighted for societal engagement. And I would really make a plea for you to click on that link and see how you can include that aspect in your proposal. Thank you. I will now hand the floor to the next colleague. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Beatrice. I think I'm the next one in the list, and here we are again with the spatial mobility topic, which aims to analyze what are the reasons that drive to demographic decline of some areas in Europe. Proposals under this topic should look at the spatial mobility between urban and rural areas, the inter-regional mobility, and the intra-EU mobility, but this list is not exhaustive. They should explore if there are policies that affect these flows, as well as linkages to mobility flows of non-European migrants. The pros and cons of the spatial mobility from an individual, economic, labor market, and administrative point of view in both sending and receiving areas should be also examined. Also, different types of mobility, such as the labor mobility, student mobility, lifestyle, and so on, should be explored. Also, the retirement and motivated mobility should be looked after, is among this list, while the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic on mobility should be also examined. The research should identify solutions that will benefit both sending and receiving areas, while solutions should include a focus on the return of individuals to their place or the country of origin. The solutions should aim to harness the positive elements of mobility and may limit the negative effects. Apart from the research on the drivers and the effects of mobility, proposals should also examine why some other individuals that under the same circumstances decide not to move. In this frame, research should consider the impact of such forms of mobility for the livelihoods of individuals moving and those who want to stay. The research and innovation projects that will receive from 2 to 3 million euro for the implementation of such research should contribute to the following outcomes. They should analyze the demographic, economic, social, and cultural effects of mobilities in European countries from a sending and receiving side, envisage policies that counter brain drain and label exploitation phenomena and enhance joint building of human capital across regions and countries, and identify effective policies to promote rural development and sustainability and address regional inequalities. And then I will hand the floor to the next speaker. Thank you.
Hello, I think you hear me. I think the next speaker is me. And those of you who didn't see me this morning, I'm a colleague of Christina in the Director General of Research and Innovation, and in the same unit as many of us today. I will try to say a few words about this interesting topic. What we aim for here is nothing less than to support the transition towards what we call a sustainability paradigm. Many voices today, as you may know, have been raised that the current dominating paradigm of economic growth needs somehow to be replaced or at least modified in order to make it possible for us to live within the boundaries of the planetary resources. And this topic aims at deepening our knowledge of the trade-offs and the balances that we need to strike in order to do this, both in terms of environmental sustainability and social sustainability. This is a research and innovation action, so you need to develop new knowledge beyond the state of the art, and you also need to look into how this knowledge can be used to achieve what we want to achieve here. Our estimation is that a project budget of between 2 and 3 million euros would be sufficient to address this topic adequately. But this does not preclude that you may still present proposals with a higher or lower budget. The total indicative budget which is assigned to this topic is 9 million euros, which means that we hope to fund around 3 projects under this topic. What you should reconcile the sustainable development goals with a standard framework and identify policy options to achieve what we call a competitive sustainability. You should also use data to look at distributive effects of economic growth and propose indicators to measure well-being and sustainable development. You need to cover a broad range of European countries and also a sufficient number of non-European countries. So in this topic, we strongly encourage international cooperation. On top of this, you may develop a platform to promote what we call integrated thinking in economic policy. Looking at the expected outcomes, they include an empirical analysis of different processes of economic growth with respect to social and environmental sustainability, and also a theoretical assessment of the links between standard economic growth paradigm, what we are used to, and the different dimensions of sustainable development. And last but not least, we do expect possible ways forward to take up a new growth framework which supports inclusivity and sustainability along with economic growth. This would be the expected outcome, and in this case, all of these expected outcomes need to be considered in the proposal. With these words, I thank you very much for your attention, and I'm looking forward to many interesting proposals under this topic. And I hand over the floor to our next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Ricard. Okay, so in this topic, overcoming discrimination for an inclusive labor market, we want to look into new and innovative ways of integration into the labor market of vulnerable groups with the objective to reduce inequalities and promote social inclusion. We consider vulnerable groups people discriminated on the basis of disability and health, on age, gender, language, racial or ethnic origin, sexual orientation, civil and family status, and religion. With this topic, we want to identify the obstacles preventing a higher inclusion of these vulnerable groups in the labor market. Research should collect data on measures to improve the situation and analyze the impact of current policy measures. Furthermore, different actors should be involved, such as employers, civil society organizations, and trade unions. What is expected for this topic is to identify concepts that foster inclusion in the labor market, to identify and compare different options for policies and measures, as well as to identify the relevant actors to achieve effective results. It is also expected the development of innovative policy approaches to promote inclusion and quality employment, including also the development of practices aiming at reducing the employment gaps of vulnerable groups. And finally, and very important, it is expected that the outcomes of this research will contribute to elaborate evidence-based policy responses to fight discrimination and promote inclusion of these vulnerable groups. This topic is a research and innovation action with a global budget of 9 million euros, and it is expected that proposals will have a budget between 2 and 3 million euros. Thank you. And now I give the floor back to Harald.
Thank you very much, Pilar. Thank you very much to all of our speakers of the last block of the destination on socio-economic transformations. And as you have seen, it's a broad variety of different topics we cover. And here again, I've asked my colleagues to show again the links for our developments in social sciences and humanities, then the frequently asked questions, and to see where other research projects in your field stand with their work, you can go to the Cordis database. And I now go back to Matej to see what questions we have received through Slido. Yep, so transformation 1.1. What is, the EU rationale for encouraging cooperation with Africa. The 011, I can't now recall who has been presenting this, so maybe we could have a reply to this, and the second goes also for the second question there and for the third question, because it all concerns the same topic.
I believe it is my topic, Carl. Thank you.
Okay.
The rationale is that the framework that we hope will be developed by projects under this topic should be applicable across many different countries and economies. And for this reason, we have to have a wide, let's say, many different economies from different parts of the world have to be included in the study and considered in the study. Regarding the second question on the eligibility of the African Union, I think this is a question better answered by our colleagues in the following session or on the formal ground, exactly which are the eligibility and which are the conditions. But under this topic, international cooperation, as I mentioned, is strongly encouraged. So and obviously it is possible to include partners from also African Union countries. Regarding the third questions on how to define productivity growth, this is, I would say, a part of the challenge under this topic. We are looking at ways to reconcile the traditional paradigm of economic policy making, focusing on economic growth and economic productivity growth with the sustainability aspects of both environmental and social sustainability growth. I hope these were satisfying answers to these questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Richard. And then we've got one question on 0106 on this topic, namely overcoming the discrimination for an inclusive labor market. I think that Pilar, you are dealing with this question.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So the different actors, when you look at the topic, you will see almost at the end that different actors can be employers, including small and medium enterprises, civil society organizations, trade unions, educational institutions, social enterprises, family associations. So there is really a broad spectrum of organizations that can participate in this topic. And for the second part of the question, I leave it also for our colleagues for the presentation later on. Our colleagues will say it can be coordinated by an NGO. This will be our colleagues from REA, who will say it in half an hour, I think.
Okay, and then I see that we've got two questions on the spatial mobility, and this would be for you, Christina. And it's quite interesting because we had a talk right before the presentations on the different forms of mobility, and we thought that we would get questions exactly on this. And I think that in this case we were right. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Harold. So as for the first question, if I understood correctly, the participant asked for a list with different types of mobility targeted by European Commission. So if this list exists, there is not a particular list, I would say, but we would like to leave the participants the space to decide where they want to focus. By spatial mobility, yeah, they can focus on rural and urban areas, on the mobility that focuses on inter-regional actually mobility, the intra-EU mobility. We want to leave it open to the participants to decide where they want to focus. This is why we are a bit narrow here. As regards the second question, I think it's quite similar. Spatial mobility is very broad. Can it be studied by means of a focus on a single broadly defined sector? For example, education and agriculture. again, my answer is more or less the same, meaning that we want to leave the space to the participants. And yes, they could focus on circular mobility, for example, or on sane mobility. And what I mean by this is, for example, they can focus on mobility of proposals can focus on mobility of workers in the same labor chain sector, or from the one region to another, or one country to another. And also they should examine the effect on one another during movement. Also circular mobility would be another example, and by this we mean the mobility between the two neighboring countries, and policies are needed to tackle this type of mobility. So we leave it quite, we are quite flexible on this and leave it to participants to decide.
Okay, thank you, Christina. Then I see, the next point here is the vulnerable groups. This is for Pilar. Should all vulnerable groups be addressed in this topic?
Yes. Well, for us, the more the better, but I understand that it can be too much. So this is why you will see in the text of the topic that is included disability and health, age, gender, language, racial or ethnic origin, etc. So you can choose, but in a way we will prefer to be the wider possible. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. Then we've got the next question, systemic discrimination based on professional background. Why is never considered by EU forums? It doesn't exist? Well, good question. Let me maybe explain to you how we come to our topics. We identify areas of policy priorities. And in these policy priorities, we see what is the urgent need for research. Where are the research gaps? And there we try to identify these gaps. And from, let's say, the 100 project proposals we do have, I'm now exaggerating a little bit, we need to boil it down to some 20 topics for a destination, for the very simple reason that our financial means are limited. And therefore we need to prioritize. And up to now, the question of professional discrimination based on professional backgrounds has not been signaled to us by the research community as one of the most pressing problems. I do not say that this might not be a problem, but so far, we have not come across evidence that it is a broad-scale pressing problem. But if we are wrong, happy to get information on that. Then the next question, the tentative, there is the question of competitive sustainability. How important is it to actively involve researchers from natural sciences? I think it very much depends on from what angle you would like to tackle the problem. If you go for economics only, then of course SSH would be at the center. But you could also tackle it from an angle where you would have projects, prototypes, or things like this being developed through the so-called STEM scientists, and there, of course, natural sciences also would have their place in it. So it really depends on what you want, from what angle you want to tackle the problem. Next point, tentative budget, 2 to 3 million. What is the maximum implementation time? If my memory serves me well, we say that normally the duration of a project is from 3 to 4 years. So I believe that it's limited to 4 years, but I will ask my colleagues from REA to also answer this question in the next block. Next question then, what is meant by processes of economic growth? Are micro stories of development barriers to development? If I'm not mistaken, I think Rickard, you have had this in your topic, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, indeed. And in this topic, we are not defining what we need exactly with the processes of economic growth. So in the end, it is up to the experts that should know best, which are the ones who are putting together the proposal, to make a good interpretation of this. But so I cannot say whether neither yes nor no to this question. It is a function of how important, how relevant this would be for your proposal to respond to the challenge that we describe in the topic.
Okay, Rickard, there is already another question for you, to which, frankly speaking, I haven't got an answer, namely transformations 0101. Would the EC be favorable to proposals based on degrowth framework?
That is it. I was expecting this question because the degrowth is becoming fashionable in many debates nowadays. In this topic, we are not categorically taking a position here, but we are hinting towards that what we mostly believe in is let's say a sustainable growth framework, meaning that we can continue to have an economic growth, but within the limits of social and environmental sustainability. However, we cannot disqualify if there is a good proposal to consider a degrowth framework either.
Okay, fine. And I think the next one also goes for you.
This was already
it is already answered.
Yes.
Yeah. And then we've got 0106, and if I'm not mistaken, this would be for you, Pilar.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Well, in the text of the call, it's not really mentioned explicitly, but normally it has to be minimum of 3 member states. But of course, to be representative, the more the better as well. So you can see, and you can also read on the annexes of the call. Thank you.
Okay, fine. Then thank you very much, Pilar. This leads us now to the end of session number 3. And maybe we could once again have a look at the slides with links to frequently asked questions and Cordis, if that is possible. Yeah, so wonderful, very many thanks. So this concludes now our discussions on a very broad range of different subject areas and topics. I hope that we were able to explain to you what we mean to really establish or to get proposals on with our topics. I think that it has been very useful to give this additional information to mention what the priority areas are. And I can only thank all of our participants in our meeting this afternoon for their active participation, for their proactive questions. One can really see that you have an interest in these subject areas. And I think I myself, together with all my colleagues from the Commission and from REA, wish you good luck with your proposals, and we very much look forward to receiving good and high quality proposals from you. This now concludes this part of our presentation, and we go on to the next part, which deals with tips and tricks for successfully submitting proposals. And this will be set out to us by our colleagues from the executive agency. And there I would like to invite Istvan to take the floor and to guide us through this part of the meeting. So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Harald. Good afternoon, everybody. On behalf of the European Research Executive Agency, let me also warmly welcome you on board. My name is Istvan Ritz, acting head of unit of REA Inclusive Society, Unit C1, which unit is responsible for the implementation of the projects funded under Cluster 2 of Horizon Europe. I know we are slowly but surely approaching to the closing, and we are a little bit ahead of the schedule. But I do hope that the upcoming session will provide plenty of helpful tips and insights for the next steps in securing funding and the vast array of topics that you have heard about today. At REA, as you may know, our paramount mission is to make sure that we deliver the objectives set in the calls and fund the best quality research and innovative projects. This is why I'm particularly pleased to have the close cooperation and the established good relationship with the so-called parent DGs present here today, DG RTD, DG ERC, and DG Employment, and between our agency, allowing us to deliver the harmonized and consistent approach towards the applications. Over the next 15 minutes, my trusted colleagues will highlight some of the key operational aspects and elements of the new call for proposals. You will gain, hopefully, useful insight on how to optimize your work for better efficiency gains, as well as the novelties of the submissions and evaluation process under Horizon Europe to watch out for. Allow me to align that in support of forming the possible best consortia, I'm particularly grateful to the Polish NCP, who will be hosting the brokerage event of tomorrow for Cluster 2. You are all invited to register. The link is available through the Info Day website. Just as for the other sessions, please do interact with us via Slido. The questions are now open for our sessions at hashtag CL2InfoDay on slido.com. Without further information, I will now pass the floor to Jorge. Jorge, please take the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Istvan, and good afternoon to everyone. We will now cover the presentation for REA and specifically the co-coordination part. So I will first introduce myself. I'm Jorge Nieto Angulo. I'm one of the co-coordinators in REA C1. And today my presentation will be divided in two parts. So the first would be dealing with some tips related to the evaluation process, and then I'll be covering some aspects related to it. So without further ado, let's delve into the presentation. Next slide, please. And let's discuss or let's speak about the chances to optimize your success. So what we have seen is that last-minute preparations are often reflected in a lower quality of the proposals, which has an impact as well on the chances of success by largely reducing them. So the advice, the tip would be to start a draft early and to submit on time. You will probably know already that the calls open on the 20th of January 2022, and the call deadline will be on the 20th of April. So you will have 3 months to prepare the proposals, which is more than enough to prepare an excellent proposal. Please also note that an incomplete submission is not considered as an obvious clerical error. And also bear in mind that the topic, you need to understand the domain and its challenges, because it can focus on research, but there could be also other additional aspects involved or included, such as IPR, policy recommendations, or policy feedback. Please also be clear and explicit, because the evaluators are only judging what they read and not the proposal potential. They have limited time. Next slide, please. how to optimize then the chances for success? The idea would be to produce a first outline by drafting a preliminary 2 or 3 pager, including your objectives, the target group, and major steps such as the work packages or the planned consortium. This document can also serve or can be used as a base to engage in discussions with potential partners and to consult with stakeholders. So to check and gauge their interest and understanding of the topic. Then to describe the project idea and work plan, and how to do that by splitting the planned work into work packages, by distributing the responsibilities and resources among the consortium, by establishing a project time schedule with the main milestones and deliverables, by explaining the project management structure, and also by describing the plan for the dissemination and exploitation, the DNE, including the communication activities. Next slide, please. So what are the frequent mishaps that we have seen in formal evaluations? Depending on the type of action, so for the partnerships, please remember that there is a minimum number of participants from either member state or associated countries. So do check the work program for exceptions there. There is also a page limit that is applied straightly during the evaluation that my colleague Cecilia will be mentioning later. That varies if it's a research and innovation action, or if it's a coordination and support action. Also regarding the completeness of the sections, one section missing could make your proposal inadmissible or could result in a lower score of it. So please make sure that all the proposal is complete. And then regarding the proposal template, there is a document available. So please read it carefully and follow the structure and cover each sub-criterion. Please also do respect the indicated font size. Do not submit proposals with a lower font size. Next slide, please. Now I will delve into the second part of my presentation, which deals with the evaluation process and principles. So the evaluation is a fair and equal treatment of all the proposals. It is based on the criteria announced in the call. It is confidential, so we avoid any conflicts of interest at all. And then the evaluation is carried out by appointed independent external experts. Next slide, please. Regarding the timeline of the evaluation in 2022, as you know already by heart, then the call deadline falls on the 20th of April 2022. So the evaluation will be carried out by these appointed external experts during the second quarter of 2022, and also for the ethics evaluation in the third quarter. The information to applicants, so the time to inform, is maximum 5 months after the call deadline. And then for those successful proposals, the grant agreement preparation will be carried out during the third and fourth quarter of 2022, with a view to sign the grant agreements by the end of 2022. Next slide, please. So what are the key documents to help you in preparing the successful proposal? First, the Horizon Europe Cluster 2 Work Program. This is the, let's say, the essential document because it includes information on the background, on the topics, and also on the budgets. Please also have a look at the general annexes to the work program, which lists the countries eligible to participate. It also includes information on the eligibility and admissibility conditions, the award criteria and procedure, and also aspects such as the scoring and threshold. Then the submission forms and templates. So these are forms, these are documents that will help you in drawing up and preparing your proposal to later submit it. And finally, the Horizon Europe Program Guide, which helps and informs applicants about the specificities of the program. There's the link there. Thank you very much. And now I'll hand over to the next speaker.
Thank you very much, Jorge. I just got a message now from our colleagues working on the technical side. They need a 1-minute break, so I'll ask you all maybe for a little bit of patience until we resume the meeting. Just 1 minute. Thank you. I'll just wait for a green light from our colleagues. Right. I just got the green light now from our colleagues so we can resume the meeting. So hello, everybody. My name is Cécile Menetre-Monchot. I'm also one of the co-coordinators for the Cluster 2 evaluations. And I will now talk to you about the submission forms and the evaluation process and criteria. Next slide, please. So the proposal submission form contains two parts, each with its own specific function. Part A consists of web-based forms that are generated by the IT system. And this part is based on the information provided by you as participants and applicants via the submission system in the Funding and Tenders portal. Part B is the narrative part of the proposal, where applicants describe the work that you intend to do. It needs to be uploaded as a PDF document using the templates provided in the submission system for the specific call. Now, Part B includes 3 sections that each correspond to an evaluation criterion. This design is meant to facilitate the work of experts in finding the information relevant to each evaluation criterion. Now, of course, experts may also find relevant information in other parts of the proposal, and we'll take this information into account. But since we're talking about tips and tricks to help you prepare your proposals, please bear in mind that using the proposal templates is mandatory. Also bear in mind that a strict page limit is applied, as my colleague Jorge just mentioned. Now, if the proposal is longer than the page limit, any text extending beyond the page limit will be blanked out, and the information it contains will not be shown to our experts. So it's important that you respect this page limit. The idea is to ensure, of course, fairness and equal treatment for all applicants, so you all have the same space to explain the work that you intend to perform. Similarly, also bear in mind that there are rules for the presentation of your proposal, so size of margins, size of font, use of tables, and so on. So please ensure that you're familiar with these rules, and bear in mind that if proposals deviate from these presentation rules, we go back to the applicants to request a revised version, and some text may be cut from the proposal. So it's in your interest to make sure that you scrupulously respect these rules. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the new fields in Part A are as follows. So there's a difference between Horizon 2020 and the new presentation in Horizon Europe submission forms. The new fields in Part A are that there's now a researchers table that explains the careers of the researchers who will be involved in the project. There's also a table on the roles of participating organizations. For instance, will the entity be involved in communication and project management, liaising with civil society, and so forth? So these are tick boxes that you need to fill in for each participant. And there's one table for each participating organization. Then the third point is that there's now a self-declaration on gender equality plan. And this is a very important novelty. Having a gender equality plan is an eligibility criterion for public bodies, higher education establishments, and research organizations from member states and associated countries. And this is applicable on calls with deadlines in 2022 and beyond. So there was a period of grace, as we will call it, for 2021, but it will be mandatory for 2022 and beyond. If the proposal is selected, having a gender equality plan will be necessary before the grant agreement signature. Fields that were moved from Part B to Part A are as follows. So there's the ethics self-assessment that used to be in Part B, now has been moved to Part A. And Horizon Europe proposals now also include a security questionnaire in which applicants must declare if the proposed activity will use and or generate information that might raise security concerns. Now, this questionnaire is compulsory and will be scrutinized by Commission services in parallel to the scientific evaluation of the proposal, as we do for ethics issues. Thirdly, the information on participants' previous activities related to the call has now been moved to Part A. Nothing new here apart from its move. What is new in Part B? So now Part B includes a glossary of terms, and this is also part of an effort to ensure consistency on the use of terminology in all phases of the project. This is an improvement that was requested by applicants and experts alike to avoid any confusion, and which we have now implemented. And likewise, the new Part B also now includes extensive explanations on what exactly should be included in each section to guide you in drafting and preparing your proposals. Next slide, please. Thank you. In terms of consortium composition, so first for research and innovation actions, please first check the specific call conditions, because there may be exceptions and there might be special rules. However, by default, a consortium must include at least one independent legal entity established in a member state and at least two other independent legal entities, each established in different member states or associated countries. Now, of course, these are minimum requirements. Proposals may, of course, include many more participants than this. There's no maximum. We have projects with 10, 20 legal entities, sometimes more, but do bear in mind that the project must be manageable and that the links between participants must be coherent. This will be also assessed in the implementation part of the evaluation. For CSAs, applications must be submitted by one or more legal entities, which may be established in a member state, associated country, or in exceptional cases, and if provided for in specific call conditions. So again, I invite you to check these. They could be established in another third country. Next slide, please. So there are three award criteria against which the proposals will be evaluated: excellence, impact, and quality and efficiency of the implementation, to which I was referring earlier. Each criterion is subdivided in a set of sub-criteria, which are adapted to the different types of action. I'll come back to this in the next slide more in detail. And as I mentioned earlier, each award criterion refers to a specific section of the proposal where applicants need to demonstrate that they have adequately addressed the criterion in question. Next slide, please. So to come back on these award criteria, evaluation criteria, as we call them, for research and innovation actions. First, excellence. The first sub-criterion focuses on the proposed project's objectives. So how ambitious the proposal is and how does it go beyond the state of the art. So this is quite standard. The second sub-criterion focuses on the proposed methodology. But linked to this, I would also like to draw your attention to the fact that you will need to describe how the gender dimension is taken into account in the proposed research content. So this section is mandatory for all topics under Cluster 2 in Horizon Europe. If you do not consider that a gender dimension is relevant in your project, please provide a justification, because this will be assessed by the experts. Remember also that this question relates to the content of the planned research, not to the gender balance in the teams in charge of carrying out the project. Finally, under the second sub-criterion, the experts will assess the quality of open science practices, including sharing and management of research outputs and engagement of citizens, civil society, and end users whenever appropriate. Now, applicants will need to show how the choice of practices and their implementation are adapted to the nature of the proposed work, and will increase also the chances of the project in delivering on its objectives. Now, if you believe, once again, that none of these practices are appropriate for your project, which may happen, you will need to provide a justification, and this will also be assessed during the evaluation by our experts. Under impact, the first sub-criterion is the credibility of the pathways to achieve the expected outcomes and impacts specified in the work program and the likely scale and significance of the contributions due to the project. Now, although impact was already an evaluation criterion in Horizon 2020, we now have a concept of pathways towards impact, which is a new feature in Horizon Europe. In a nutshell, the idea of pathways is to demonstrate the links step by step of how a project will lead to specific outcomes, which will in turn have an impact on a research field or on society at large, and therefore respond to a stated objective of the work program that goes beyond the immediate scope and duration of the project. The second sub-criterion is the suitability and quality of the measures to maximize expected outcomes and impacts as set out in the dissemination and exploitation plan, including communication activities. So we will check whether your proposal includes a dissemination and exploitation plan. And in the sub-criterion, you will be invited to provide a first version of this plan. You'll also be asked to outline your strategy for the management of intellectual property. So any foreseen protection measures, design rights, copyright, trade secrets, and so on, and how these would be used to support exploitation. And thirdly, you will be asked to provide a summary of this section by presenting in a template table that we provide the key elements of your project impact pathway and of the measures to maximize the impact of the project. Finally, under quality and efficiency of the implementation, you will need to describe the work plan. So again, quite standard, provide an assessment of risks and describe the different work packages, the resources, and so on. The second sub-criterion will be the capacity and role of each participant and the extent to which the consortium as a whole brings together the necessary expertise. So we'll be looking at the coherence of the consortium and what each participant will contribute to the proposed project and how these are articulated between each other. Next slide, please. For CSAs, the evaluation criteria are roughly the same, save for excellence, as you can see, which has been adapted to the specificities of CSAs. And this is, of course, linked to the fact that these are mainly coordination actions, not research initiatives as such. And this is all from me. I'll now pass the floor to my colleague Agnes. Agnes, this is for you now. Thank you all.
Thank you, Cecile. I can't see myself yet on the screen. Okay, my name is Agnes Schilberg-Knight. I will be speaking about the technicalities, mainly about the funding and tenders portal, as that's your entry point towards the searching for funding opportunities. The next slide, please. First, I would like to show those who are not yet familiar with the portal, the main page to enter the search for funding opportunities. So you can search by keywords, or you can filter by programs or by sub-programs, and then you can get to the cluster 2 calls easily. I would also suggest to take a look at our webinar, which was made for newcomers, and then you can get familiar with more details of the portal. So once you have selected your topic from this page, you can enter the topic pages. Let's see the next page, please. The proposal submission system is available from each topic page. For that, the proposal submission needs to be open, which will happen for our case at the end of January. It's only the coordinator who needs to enter the system from here. So as participant, you will be invited by the coordinators. So it's essential that the coordinator starts drafting the proposal in time, because partners will be invited via the system and their rights will be also restricted in the submission system. So it's the coordinator who has the rights to edit all the sections, invite participants and upload the Part B annex, and then the coordinator can upload the proposal, submit the proposal as well. The participants have restricted rights, they can edit their own sections only. And in this case, it's very important that also the participants should devote enough time to fill in the Part A information, as now we have an extended list to fill in by each participant, like the list of researchers who are participating in the proposal. And then you need to add the experience and publications of each entity as well. All these rights, which are created during the proposal submission, will be kept throughout the process towards granting. So in case you are invited for grant preparation, then everybody who had the right to enter the proposal would have the right to continue during the granting phase as well. It is important to submit the first version of the proposal as early as possible so that you could detect any technical issues. You will see that the proposal submission system provides you lots of warnings and may also block the submission if you do not fill in some essential information. But so please test it as early as possible to avoid any last-minute issues, because our deadline is shown on the topic pages and is normally not changed. And any new submitted version overrides the previous one, so there's no problem of making a mistake like that. Now, in order to find the template for the topic, you will need to enter the submission system, and there you can upload the correct version. Next slide, please. This is just one of the pages of the submission system. This is the participants screen where the coordinator can add all the participants, indicating the email addresses. And then upon saving this page, then the invitations will be sent out to the participants. We also have an eligibility warning at the top of the page, but please bear in mind that not everything can be checked by the IT system. So for any topic conditions, you need to go back to the work program or to the topic page and read them there carefully. We have two new entity types in Horizon Europe. One is the affiliated entity, the other one is the associated partner. And the affiliated entities can be added linked to each participant. As indicated in the middle of the page, they are like the third parties in Horizon Europe, but now they are mentioned differently. They can have their related tasks and the related budget as well, but no contacts are required. For the associated partners, it's important that they will have no budget line. There will be zero budget indicated in the budget table. They can be added to the complete proposal. They do not belong to any other partner, but there can be no contacts added. And for more details, I suggest that you look at the work program general annex, where these new types of entities are described more in details. On the left-hand side of the screen, you can see that we have added different references for the guidance materials. The online manual provides an overview of the main business steps, while the IT how-to wiki is really something that I would recommend to everyone who's struggling with the submission system, because there you can find step-by-step guidance on all the IT tools, including the submission system. The next slide, please. Regarding the partner search, I've seen that there were some questions about it. We have actually two sorts of partner searches in the portal. One is linked to the topic pages. So once the topic becomes a forthcoming or an open call, then the partner search will be available. And then those who have access as a leader or self-registrant to their organization, then they can publish an expertise offer or request via the topic pages, or they can react to any of the previously posted announcements. Now we have a new feature in the portal. This is called person profile. Gradually we are making use of it. First of all, everybody, the users, should start filling their person profiles. And then in the upcoming months, we are going to open the partner search facility for those who have created their person profiles. And then you as a researcher will be able to submit also a partner search announcement. And then, so the other sort of partner search that we have includes all the funded projects and organizations as well. So if you go to the participate, how to participate page, from there, the partner search page will provide a complete search functionality where you can drill down and make different filters and then find who were the organizations funded in certain topics, for example, in Horizon 2020 topics previously. So these are the two main search types on the portal, but of course, we'll have the brokerage event tomorrow. And then there are also national events. So I would suggest to contact your national contact points because there might be national events where you can get to know national participants mainly. Next slide, please. And we have an expert database, which is shared with all the EU programs from this year. And I would recommend that if you are able to contribute as an expert, register in our database, indicate your expertise, and then you might be selected as one of the expert evaluators in our next calls. Thank you. Next slide. And here you may find a list of the webinars which were previously produced. I would really recommend you to listen to some of them as they are very practical and they will go much more into details than we could do it here about the preparation of the proposals and about the additional aspects which have to be incorporated in your proposals for to have a successful proposal. And then finally, we have a new section on the Funding and Tenders portal. This is the last link you can see on the screen. You can take a look at it regularly. We post there any new webinars, even about Horizon 2020, or link to other programs as well. So come and visit the portal regularly. Thank you. Next slide, please. And the next slide, please, with the Slido link. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Agnes. Now we will move to the Slido session, so the Q&A. And we will go with the first question. Is it obligatory to submit any attachments to the application? Agnes, Cecile, do you want to start answering?
Yes, I can. So regarding the attachments, normally when you go to the submission system, you will see the number of attachments required for the given topic. The usual attachment is 1 Part B, and contrary to H2020, where we had 2 Part B annexes and an ethics annex, in Horizon Europe we have only 1 annex with the limited page number. So remember that the ethics section is now incorporated in the Part A.
Thank you, Agnes. Next one is, can a research and development NGO be the consortium coordinator? Cecile, do you want to take over?
I'd rather leave this one to you.
So for this question, basically an NGO could be a coordinator, but then as you probably know, the financial capacity of the partner will be checked. So it is not disregarded, but then at proposal level, the capacity and the financial capacity of the coordinator will be checked. Agnes, I don't know if you want to complement anything.
Well, it's good to take a look at the evaluation criteria. Under the implementation, for example, each member of the consortium has to add the relevant experience and expertise. And in the Part A, we can also see the list of relevant publications, for example, or previous project expertise. So it's good to keep in mind what will be evaluated and then choose the coordinator accordingly.
Thank you. Next one is, if many project consortium partners are involved in a proposal, is the page limit being raised accordingly if each partner meets a budget table? No, each partner doesn't meet a budget table and the page limit is not raised. Basically, the budget table will include a row per, let's say, partner and the coordinator, but the page limit will not be raised. The page limit stays the same for all the proposals. So it is not raised in case there are more partners involved in a proposal. Next one, will the gender equality plan be asked in part A or in the funding and tenders registration under legal information for the year? And in case both, what happens with the contradictions between these two? Cecilia, Agnes?
Well, it is under the portal and legal information for the leaders. So it's the leader who needs to tick the box under the My Organizations. And it will be applicable from next year on. And then we'll see how it will be working, in fact. But yeah, normally we will be reading it from this section. So there shouldn't be any contradictions from next year on.
Thank you. There is also a related question to the JEPS, to the gender equality plan, if it should be signed at the time of the submission or signature, and if still in preparation during submission, to tick yes or no if it's not finished, but it will be finished at the time of the signature. Agnes?
Maybe do you want to take this one, Agnes?
Please go ahead.
Yeah, so the gender equality plan has to be signed and in place by the time of the, what we call the GAP, so the grant preparation. So it does not have to be signed at the time of submission, but it will need to be signed before the signature of the grant.
Perfect, thank you. There is also another question linked with gender. In this case, if gender integration is lacking in a proposal, will the candidates be asked to do extra work package by the reviewers, similar to what happened during the ethics work packages?
Maybe I can take this one.
Please.
So if gender integration is lacking in a proposal, one thing that you have to bear in mind is that the proposal that is submitted is final. So we do not ask you to provide more information later. It will be evaluated as it stands. So if information is lacking, then your scores, this will be reflected in the scores for your proposal.
Thank you, Cecile. I will take then the next one, which deals with the budget. In this case, tentative budget should be 2 to 3 million. Possible to inform what should be the maximum implementation time. So for this question, there is no specific time frame or timeline indicated in the work program. However, based on previous experience, also on previous evaluations, the average duration for an action is 36 months, so 3 years. And it's also related to the size, so to the, in this case, 2 to 3 million euros, but this does not preclude a different duration of the action. So it can be longer or it can be shorter in that sense. But again, the average duration is 36 months based on previous evaluations and the actions that are ongoing. Next one, can the UK be the coordinator? In a previous presentation, it was mentioned that the UK wasn't an associated country yet. Is the UK eligible to apply? Agnes, Cecilia, or even Rosanna in this case?
Maybe I'll take it.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the UK for now, I'm sorry, my video is not working for some reasons, but I'll reply anyway. So the UK is for now considered an associated country, even though there has been no signing of any associated country document or agreement. But until we are told otherwise, the UK is considered an associated country. So yes, the UK can be coordinator.
and they are eligible to apply. There are two things. One is to apply, the other one is to get funding. So you can make a distinction as well. But as a third country, if they become third country, just keep the risk in mind, I would say.
Thank you. Next one. Then is the gender equality plan required for I guess, African partners? Cecilia, Agnes, do you have an answer?
As far as I know, they are required for member states and associated countries.
Well, that's a clear answer. Thank you. Another question related to the duration of projects, or is it determined in advance? No, it is not established in the work program nor on the topic. So again, the average duration of an action of a project based on previous evaluations and on ongoing actions is 36 months. But again, this does not preclude a different duration that can be shorter or even longer. Is it possible to finance the technology needed for the development of the project outcomes? Cecilia, Agnes?
Under other direct costs, if it fits in the budget and it's in line with the aims, it should fit in.
Thank you. Next one. One is asked to indicate certain page numbers of Part B in Part A system. This does not make it easy to submit a pre-version of a proposal. Any suggestions?
Well, page references are needed, especially in the ethics section. So yeah, I take note of this. Thank you. You can indicate any preliminary page number in the ethics section. I think other than that, there are no references needed.
Okay, thank you, Agnes. Next one from Eddie. Associated partners in the submission system, whether eligible for funding, will they be able to include the budget for the associated partners?
Well, associated partners by default do not request EU money. So that's why they cannot indicate the requested EU contribution. On the other hand, if you want to become a partner as a third country, you can still indicate the EU requested EU contribution, and then the evaluators will decide whether you may get EU funding or not.
Agnes. Next question. Can one partner integrate more than one consortium proposal? Yes, and the one partner could be part of several consortia, so also among different topics. So this is not forbidden. The members of the consortium are typically established groups. If a single scholar wants to join, how is it possible to take him/her on board? Cecile, do you want to comment, or Agnes?
Well, there are two ways. One is that even a natural person can join the consortium, but usually it's better if the legal entity of the person where his or she is working would join the consortium.
Okay, thank you. And let's cover the last two questions. Hello, are organizations eligible to apply if they already receive funding from Creative Europe?
Yes, they can, but please make sure there's no double funding, because this is what we need to avoid, and what we are checking as well, that there would be no double funding with different programs or different proposals or ongoing projects.
Thank you. And the last question, can a consortium include more than one partner from the same country? The answer is yes. It is not forbidden that a consortium includes more than one partner coming from the same country. So the proposal in this case would just need to respect the minimum number of participants, depending on whether it's a research and innovation action, or coordination and support action. And for that, you will find information regarding the minimum number of participants in the general annexes to the work program. And with that, we have covered all the questions. Thank you very much for having asked them via Slido. And now we'll hand back the floor to my colleague, Harald, to make the closing remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, dear colleagues. And this concludes the presentations of today. Before now summarizing the main elements of today, I should also mention and give a big hand to Ilim Rad and Matej Čerpňák, who have done the presentation and the Slido for Destination 3. I forgot to mention them and to thank them at the meeting. Sorry for this, so I do it now. You have also received now from our colleagues an email with a link to the YouTube session. And this link of the YouTube session, you can keep this link. So whenever you want to double check one or the other part of the meeting at which you might not have assisted live, you can review these parts. So it's always good to have this information. Now this concludes, I would say, long day full of information. Let me just recall that at the start of our meeting, our co-chairs have set out to all of us what are the priorities for the Commission, in particular in our field of work, what are the individual Commission initiatives, and these initiatives take place from now until the year 2031. They are spread over time, and there are many elements of it to which we can make contributions with our topics to the policy development. And please, when you prepare your proposals, bear in mind what also the agenda for these initiatives is. Secondly, please try to check what has already been done as far as research in these fields, what are the ongoing projects, how you can liaise with people from ongoing projects, and how you can establish a regular dialogue with policymakers to have a direct feedback of some of the results which will already come available throughout the running period of your projects, and that you have this regular exchange. This will very much help creating impact for policy making, which is at the heart of all these activities we do. In the morning, we had presentations on the field of democracy as well as on cultural heritage. In the afternoon, we then had the presentation on the socioeconomic transformations, and this was then complemented by a very useful help and indications from our colleagues from REA on how to present proposals, the do's and the don'ts, and how to make a successful proposal. I believe that with this background, you should be in a position to be able to take a decision whether you would like or not to enter into preparing a proposal. It is quite a cumbersome work because you need to have partners, you need to observe all the obligations we have in the application forms. So this is challenging. On the other hand, if you are selected for a European project, there is financing coming for this project. And secondly, it's also good reference within the research and science world that you have been awarded a contract in the research program. Let me recall to you that the call for the year 2022 will be opened on the 20th of January and will be closed on the 20th of April. So this is the time when you can submit your proposals. I also would like to invite you to take part in the brokerage events many of the national contact points organize to find partners for projects. And I would also like to refer you to your national contact point on any additional questions you might have as far as possible proposals from a procedural, from a financial, and from a content point are concerned. With these words, I come to an end of our meeting today. I would like to thank all the colleagues who have helped preparing this meeting, as far as the content, as far as the presentations, and as far as the organization and running of this session are concerned. I would like to wholeheartedly thank all our participants at this meeting. In the morning session, we had, in the peak period, I think more than 450 participants. And in the afternoon, where we were left only with one destination, we also had much over 200 participants. I think this is a very good feedback and a very good level of reach out we have managed. And I can only say, please spread the message, send the links to other interested parties so that we can get a good number of high quality proposals for the challenges and for the opportunities ahead of us. With this, I thank all of you and I wish you a nice rest of the afternoon. Goodbye.